when Joy introduced Johnson to her world. However, the reactions were less than favorable. Her father was the first to express his disapproval. "A mechanic, Joy? Have you lost your mind?" Robert Benjamin's voice thundered through the grand sitting room, his disbelief palpable. "What can he possibly offer you?" Joy Benjamin was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. Born into privilege, she was the jewel of the Benjamin family, the daughter of Robert and Amelia Benjamin, owners of the renowned Benjamin Companies. Their properties stretched across countries, and the family name was synonymous with luxury, power, and wealth. Joy had grown up surrounded by everything one could dream of: designer clothes, lavish vacations, and endless opportunities. Yet, for all the material comfort she enjoyed, Joy had always felt like something was missing. At 28, she was the picture of grace and elegance, and her eyes sparkled with kindness. Her soft smile carried an air of humility that set her apart from others. In her social circle, to the outside world, she seemed to have it all: beauty, wealth, and charm. Yet, beneath the surface, Joy yearned for something money could never buy: genuine love. Her family adored her, but they had certain expectations. Amelia, her late mother, had once said, "You must marry someone who strengthens our legacy, Joy, someone who matches your stature and ambition." Though her mother's words had been well-meaning, they planted seeds of pressure that Joy struggled to shake off even years later. Her father, Robert, took a more practical approach. "Love is fleeting," he often said. "Marry someone with sense and status. Everything else will follow." Joy listened to these words, but she didn't internalize them. She believed love should be about more than a merger between powerful families. Over the years, she had seen suitors come and go, each of them more interested in her last name than in her heart. She craved something real, something pure, and she was willing to wait for it. The day Joy met Johnson was unremarkable. At least, it had seemed so at first. She had been driving home from a charity event when her car, sleek black convertible, started sputtering on the outskirts of town. The engine failed, leaving her stranded on a deserted road as rain clouds gathered ominously overhead. Frustrated but composed, Joy called her usual chauffeur service, only to be informed that they couldn't send anyone for at least an hour. With no other options, she pulled up her coat's hood against the drizzle and began searching for help. Then abruptly a young man on a bike stopped. "Can I help you?" he asked, wiping his hands on his face. Joy nodded her head and began to explain her situation, her voice calm but tinged with the frustration. Johnson listened attentively, nodding as she spoke. Then, without hesitation, he began to examine the car as if he was a mechanic. And as soon as he began, everything was settled. When Joy handed him the bill, he refused, trying to kick-start his bike. Joy insisted on paying. Johnson shook his head firmly. "That's not necessary," he said. "I didn't do it for money. I only wanted to help you." Joy was taken aback by his refusal. She was accustomed to people taking from her all the time, but Johnson treated her differently. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not as Joy Benjamin, the heiress, but as a person, someone who could be in need. Over the next few weeks, Joy found herself thinking about Johnson more than she cared to admit. She called him with the card he gave her, and then she noticed that he was truly a roadside mechanic. She went to his garage under the guise of needing minor repairs, each visit an opportunity to learn more about him. Johnson was hardworking, honest, and fiercely independent. Joy loved people with a humble beginning. She loved people like him. For Joy, their conversations were a revelation. Johnson didn't care about her wealth or status. He was genuinely interested in her as a person. He listened when she talked about her dreams and fears, offering thoughtful insights rather than empty platitudes. Their connection deepened with each meeting, and before long, Joy realized she had fallen in love. When she introduced Johnson to her world, however, the reactions were less than favorable. Her father was the first to express his disapproval. "A mechanic, Joy? Have you lost your mind?" Robert Benjamin's voice thundered through the grand sitting room, his disbelief palpable. "What can he possibly offer you?" Joy met her father's gaze, her voice steady. He offers me honesty, kindness, and love, things money can't buy. Her father's lips pressed into a thin line. If you insist on pursuing this mistake, don't expect my support. I won't have my daughter throw her life away for a man who'll only drag her down. Her friends were no kinder. At a cocktail party, Perpetual, her closest confidant, pulled her aside with a look of disbelief. Joy, I know you're tired of the same old crowd, but Johnson? He's so ordinary. Joy bristled at the comment. Since when is love about appearances, Perpetual? Perpetual sighed, swirling her wine. It's not just about appearances. It's about compatibility. You come from different worlds. You'll end up resenting each other. But Joy refused to listen. She had always been headstrong, and this time was no different. Against all odds, she chose Johnson. Not because he was perfect, but because he made her feel alive in a way no one else ever had. Joy walked inside the boutique with Perpetual grumbling at her back. Joy didn't like the fact that her girlfriend didn't like the man she wanted to marry, that she condemned her like every other person around her. But it wasn't their fault. They didn't know what love was all about. They thought that love was all about money. Joy had severally explained the reason why she loved Johnson. Johnson might be poor, but he had a good heart. He was the best thing that had happened to her. Joy loved the way Johnson pampered her with the little money he had. He had taken her on a date in an expensive restaurant. But everyone around her thought that Johnson was only pretending. They said that he only loved her because of her money, perhaps because of her position in the office. But Joy knew that he loved her. Because of none of them. He loved her because he wanted to love her. After all, he didn't know her the day he rejected her money after repairing her car. Joy moved to the male section in the boutique and began to bring some clothes down both shirt, trousers, and polo. Joy, what are you doing? Perpetual asked, staring at the clothes. What? I told you that I want to shop for my man, Joy answered angrily. That wasn't the first time Perpetual would be doing something like that. For your man, you said? Perpetual said, and Joy nodded her head. Joy, I have told you that this guy doesn't love you. He is only with you because of what he is getting from you. Can't you see it? Allow me to worry about that. I love him, and that's what matters. What you have failed to understand is that Johnson didn't know my last name when he helped me. Says by who? He knows you, and I think you should be careful with the way you spend your money on him. Joy brushed the topic aside and continued to select different beautiful dresses for Johnson. Perpetual stayed at the back so angry and annoyed. When they got home, Perpetual refused to carry any of the bags. She insisted that Johnson should come out and carry them. After all, he wasn't doing anything at home. But Joy chided her. Johnson is going to be my husband soon, and with money or without money, he must be accorded his respect as a man, Joy said angrily. Johnson was inside the sitting room watching movies when Joy and Perpetual entered. Johnson sprang up and gave Joy a warm embrace, kissed her, and went inside immediately to get cold water for her. Perpetual was there staring at them. For all she knew, everything Johnson did was for money and nothing else. Johnson went inside and came out with a bottle of chilled water and 2 glass cups. He placed them on the center table and disappeared inside the kitchen. Few minutes later, he came out with a tray of fried rice and chicken. Who made this food, babe? Joy asked with a surprised look. Even Perpetual was surprised, though her anger obscured it. I made it. Didn't I promise to make something for you? Johnson said, grinning from ear to ear. You did, but I didn't know it would be something like this. I thought you were going to make a simple food and not something as stressful as fried rice. Taste it first before praising me, Johnson chuckled. Joy went over to the dining and began to devour the food. She praised the food so much that it began to irritate Perpetual. With so much happiness, Joy began to unpack all the clothes and shoes out. She told Johnson that she wanted to surprise him, but his own surprise was much. Johnson hugged her so tight and kissed her several times. They were happy, tickling each other, but Perpetual wasn't. She sat at the couch burning inside. Everything Joy did with Johnson irritated her. She hated the fact that Joy was the one taking care of a man instead of the man taking care of her. She didn't know the kind of mechanic that abandoned his job to live with a woman. Perpetual looked for every little thing just to hate Johnson. If eyes were guns, she would have shot him dead one day. But one thing undeniable was Johnson's handsomeness. He didn't have money, but he had the body, the height, and the facial look. His well-plastered beard, his height, straight leg, even face and white set of teeth. What of his dark, excellent skin color? Everything about Johnson screamed cute and beautiful. Joy said that his fingers were smooth and straight like pencils. Joy named him Model and also promised to enroll him in one of the schools where he would learn everything concerning modeling. He was a mechanic, a good one as that, but it wasn't moving for him. Without listening to anyone, Joy got married to Johnson. Her father wasn't in support of the marriage, but he had nothing to do to stop it. Joy and Johnson's marriage was a beautiful one. They continued to love each other. Joy was not a woman to rely on others to maintain her household. Despite her wealth and power, she didn't employ any housekeepers or gardeners. She insisted on cooking Johnson's meals and washing his clothes herself. "I want you to know how much I value you," she would say as she carefully folded his shirts or placed his favorite dishes on the dining table. "You're spoiling me, you know," Johnson teased one evening as they sat in the garden, the golden light of sunset casting a warm glow around them. "You deserve it," Joy replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "You work so hard, and I just want to make things easier for you." Johnson wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer. "I'm the luckiest man in the world." Joy smiled, content in the belief that their love was unshakable. But everything changed one rainy evening. Joy had stayed late at her office on that day. By the time she left, the streets were slick with rain. The city lights blurred through her windshield. She was halfway home when it happened. A truck veered into her lane, its headlights blinding. The impact was instant and brutal, the sound of crunching metal ringing in her ears as her car spun out of control. People rushed immediately and took her to the hospital. Johnson's attention was called immediately, and he rushed to the hospital. Perpetual also came a few minutes after Johnson's arrival. Joy was in the ICT unit when they came. The doctor told them that the accident was so severe and had affected Joy so much. Johnson was terrified. He cried and wept badly. What would happen to him if anything happened to Joy? He knew vividly that Joy was his life. Later, the doctor summoned Johnson and Perpetual inside his office. "You are the husband, right?" the doctor asked, pointing at Johnson. Johnson nodded his head and muttered an incoherent sound. "And you are her friend?" The doctor pointed at Perpetual and she nodded. The doctor adjusted his seat and cleared his throat. Perpetual's eyes widened as she stared at the doctor who was putting pressure and fear in them. "Mrs. Joy's accident is not a small thing, but thank God she was brought here on time. Is she going to survive it?" Johnson asked with his lips trembling. Fear had already gripped him. "Calm down. She will be fine," the doctor assured them, and Johnson inhaled and exhaled heavily. Mrs. Joy hit her face on the steering wheel. "I am sorry, but the damage had affected her eyes and her ears." "What?" Johnson cut in. Perpetual clutched her head with her hands. "Like I said, she will be fine. Calm down. Due to the damages, Mrs. Joy can't see for now. She can only hear what you say close to her ears." "Are you saying that my wife is blind and deaf?" Johnson shouted, clutching on his stomach. Perpetual, who had never liked Johnson, began to calm him down by pressing his shoulder. Johnson was surprised, but that wasn't his problem. "I am sorry, Mr. Johnson, but that is it for now. She is partially deaf and blind, but we will continue to do our best." "Will she see again? Is she going to hear something very well?" "I don't know for now, but we will continue to do our best." The days that followed were grueling. Joy struggled to adjust to her new reality, relying entirely on Johnson, Perpetual, and the nurses for even the simplest tasks. She felt helpless, a far cry from the independent woman who had once managed a company and supported her husband's dreams. Every movement was a challenge, every moment a reminder of what she had lost. Johnson was attentive at first, sitting by her side and helping her navigate the hospital room. But as the days turned into weeks, his visits became shorter and less frequent. "I have to check on something," he would say, kissing her forehead before leaving. "I'll be back soon." Joy nodded each time, though her heart ached at his absence. She told herself he was simply busy, that he was doing his best to juggle his responsibilities while caring for her. But the loneliness in her hospital room was suffocating. When Joy was finally discharged, returning home felt bittersweet. Her once beautiful villa now seemed like a labyrinth of dangers. She bumped into furniture, tripped over rugs, and burned her hands while attempting to cook. Despite her best efforts, she felt like a stranger in her own home. Johnson tried to help at first, guiding her through the house, but his patience wore thin as her dependence on him grew. "Joy, you have to be more careful," he snapped one evening after she spilled a pot of boiling water on the counter. "I'm trying," Joy said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," Johnson sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's fine. Just let me handle it next time." Joy nodded, her heart heavy with guilt. She hated feeling like a burden, but she didn't know how to make things easier for him. Few weeks after Joy returned from the hospital, she noticed that many things had changed. Johnson was no longer the husband she married. He no longer helped her in the kitchen. At times she would be the one cooking alone. In her condition, and her friend Perpetual, who had always been her rock, had also changed. Perpetual no longer visited the house like she used to do. At times when Joy asked her why, she would say that she was busy. Because of all these, Joy begged Johnson to employ a maid, someone who would be taking care of her, but Johnson refused. In his words, he didn't want any maid in his house. A house he didn't know how much the house rent cost. But he was a man, the head of the family. When Joy said that she would ask her family to find one for her, Johnson threatened to leave the marriage if anyone comes to the house. "Marriage is for two people," he said. Joy now shaped her mouth each time. She wanted to talk to Johnson, because whatever she said was always received in another way. Johnson would always say that she was insulting him, because she had more money than him. So because this, Joy continued to stay without a maid. One day Joy was inside the sitting room when Perpetual entered. Well, Joy was blind and deaf, but she heard the faint clicking sound on the floor. "Who is that? Who is that?" she asked, but no one replied to her. She imagined if she had heard something, or not, because the sound was faint. Perhaps her mind was playing tricks on her, she reasoned. Perpetual entered the room and began to laugh with Johnson. They laughed and fell on the bed, clung into each other. Johnson said that Joy was a fool to think that he would consider marriage after what happened to her. In his exact words, he would never marry a blind woman who would depend on him. But what he didn't remember was that Joy married him as a poor, wretched man who would always depend on her. While they were on the bed cuddling each other, Johnson heard his name. It was Joy yelling his name continuously. He sighed heavily and tried to stand up, but Perpetual dragged him down. "Let her sort herself out," Perpetual said, and both collapsed on the bed again. The whole thing was becoming too much for Joy. It seemed as if all the ingredients that made life beautiful in her life were gone. Her eyes, her ears, and then her husband and her best friend. The only people that would have cared had abandoned her because of her choice of husband. Although they didn't disown her, but that caring wasn't there again. She loved Johnson, but she could sense that something was wrong. Her instinct told her that Johnson was bringing a woman inside her home, that he was dating someone, but each time such thought came into her head, she tried everything possible to brush it off, saying that she was thinking that way because he was no longer taking care of her. One afternoon, her personal accountants visited. Thank God Johnson wasn't around when he came in. He told Joy that the rate at which Johnson had been taking money from their joint account was no longer normal. He spent money as if money was water. Joy gnashed her teeth and blamed love for everything. She told her accountant to move a huge amount of money to another of her accounts. She thanked the man profusely for his help and also promised to repay him for all his work. It was a monthly annual checkup. When Joy went to hospital, the doctor told her that she was going to spend 7 days in the hospital. There's something he would love to do to know if she would regain her sight fully. Joy was so happy. She made a call across to her husband to tell him that she wouldn't be coming home for 7 days. Although she didn't tell him the reason, she only told him that the doctor said she would be in the hospital for a total examination. The only thing Johnson asked her was it getting bad? This broke Joy's heart. At first she thought that Johnson would offer her a shoulder to lean on, but it was crystal clear that Johnson wanted her to die in pain. For those 7 days, Johnson didn't visit her in the hospital. She called and called, but he never answered her calls. Neither Johnson nor Perpetual visited her at the hospital. Right there in the hospital, Joy concluded that something was going on between Johnson and Perpetual. But then she thought of the way Perpetually had always hated Johnson. No, it wasn't possible, or could it be that she no longer hates him? The 7th day arrived quickly. Joy lay on the bed with her face towards the wall, but she could hear the clicking sound on the tiles. It was the doctor. The doctor came in and removed the tape in Joy's eyes. "Open your eyes slowly," the doctor said. Slowly and gently, Joy opened her eyes. Everything was blurred at first, a kind of faint darkness. She could see something far. Joy smiled sweetly and said, "Doctor, I can see small. It will take days, weeks, or even months, but you will regain your sight. And whatever that affected your eyes was also what has to do with your ears. So as you regain your eyesight gradually, so shall you also regain your hearing," the doctor said. Joy was overjoyed. She felt like jumping up and down. She shook the doctor's hands continuously, but then something clicked her mind, and all her happiness disappeared. Her husband and her best friend. Those two people she had given a good life. She had done everything for them, but what did she get when she needed them most? Nothing. Perpetual was a nobody when she met her during their youth services days. Her monthly allowance was nothing. It was she, Joy, who brought her in to stay with her in her own apartment, and after the service, she helped her to secure a job in one of her father's companies in Lagos. What of Johnson? His own was nothing to write home about, yet she loved him. Even when people gave her every reason not to love him, yet she loved him. She created a joint account where he would be able to take money as he wanted, without telling her first. She also paid 1 million naira into his personal account every month. She had never asked him what he did with all that money. Perpetual had told her to stop giving him money, that he was spending them on other girls. But she didn't listen to her. It wasn't in her place to know how a full-grown man spent his money. Being poor shouldn't rub him off his manhood. He is an African man, Nigeria man to be precise. Therefore, he was the head of the family. But everything became clear after the accident. Now she had found out that Johnson never loved her. He only loved her money, and that was why he wanted to spend all the money in the joint account within 3 months. Let this be a secret. I don't want anyone to know that I am regaining my sight. Not even my husband," Joy said to the doctor, and the man nodded his head. At home, Joy sat on the couch in the sitting room, her walking stick placed by her side. Her black spectacle covered her eyes. She needs to pretend. As she was busy deliberating on what to do if she found out that there was something going on between her husband and Perpetual, she heard the clicking sound on the floor tiles. Her first impulse was to call Perpetual, but then she remembered that she was blind and closed her already open mouth. "Who is that? Is anybody there?" she asked. But Perpetual didn't say anything. She watched as Perpetual paused and casted a dreadful look towards her side. Then she tiptoed through the sitting room inside the room. Joy felt like screaming. Her first impulse was to grab her and flog her on the floor. But she controlled herself. So her instinct wasn't wrong. There's something going on between those two. God! She screamed inwardly. She didn't know what to do. Confronting them wasn't a good idea. Joy calmed her nerves, breathed in and out slowly. As she was about to rest, she heard their laughter echoing from the corridor. Then she saw them. Both of them couldn't control themselves. They collapsed on the couch on the other end of the sitting room, kissing and cuddling each other. Joy froze as she watched the drama played in front of her. The ones they did inside the room weren't enough. She heard the way Johnson was prophesying his love for Perpetual. Johnson told her that he loved her more than Joy, that he had only accepted Joy because of her money. But Perpetual was the one he genuinely loved. Joy's stomach grumbled and tightened as she listened to the nonsense coming out of their mouths. Even the way Perpetual was telling him that she loved him so much. It took the grace of God for Joy to control herself. When they left, Joy began to ask herself questions. Did it mean that something like that had been going on before? When did it start? Was it before or after her accident? Why Perpetual and Johnson? Why her best friend? How could Perpetual do something like that to her? She didn't know what to think. She didn't know if she should base her worries on Perpetual or Johnson. How could the two people she loved so much betray her like that? The betrayal seemed worse than the accident. How could the two people she loved and trusted treat her that way? And then she told herself that she had nothing to do with both again. They were dead to her. She called her accountant and told him to pull all the money in the joint account out. She knew that by doing that she would break Johnson's wings. All she wanted was a silent revenge. She would do something that both of them would regret the day they met her. What they didn't know was that the same teeth she used while laughing was also the one she used to bite someone. Now she had used it to laugh, but they didn't appreciate that side of the teeth. It was time to bite with it. Perhaps they would appreciate that one. Joy was laying on the bed in the early hours of the day when Johnson bashed inside the room angrily. "What is the meaning of this?" he snarled. "What?" Joy asked slowly. "How come there's no money in the account again? What happened to all the money in the account?" Joy shook her head. "I don't know. I haven't even withdrawn from the account." "Babe, what are you saying?" "I don't know anything about the money. That's what I am saying." "Babe, you need to call your accountant to verify what happened," Johnson said and sat closer to her on the bed and placed his arm on her shoulder. "You won't believe what happened to your baby today." "What happened, my love?" Joy said with a sweet voice, moving her fingers towards his face, feigning to be blind. She could see how dreadful Johnson's look was, the way he was staring at her without knowing that she was seeing him. "I went to a club with my friends. They all paid for what they ate, and when I wanted to pay for my own, it was then that I noticed that there's no money in the account again. You need to see how embarrassed I was. One of your friends would have paid for you. They all refused. I didn't come back with the car. They said that I won't go with the car until I pay the money." "Why? Did they know who they were playing with?" Joy feigned to be angry, but her heart was full of happiness. "That was exactly what I told them. I will definitely deal with their manager when I pay the money. Meanwhile, how much is involved that they had to take your car?" "Just 3 million naira. Imagine, an ordinary 3 million naira. That's why they seized your car." He planted a kiss on her left cheek. "This is why I love you. Babe, please call your accountant and find out what happened. Let's know if it is a network or what. I want to go and bring the car home." "I will, baby," Joy said and picked up her phone. "Let me get something from the kitchen," Johnson said and left. But as he was going out, Joy followed him slowly. Then she heard their voices. She peeped through the open door and saw them. It was Perpetual talking to him with a harsh voice. "This is the perfect opportunity. She is blind. She could only hear something when you say it directly to her ear. This is the perfect time to make her sign the documents. With what we have in those documents, we can start a new and beautiful life outside the country. Let's not wait. You have her antidote. Go now and collect the paper from your lawyer and make her sign it." "You are right. I think this is the best time for it. Are you following me, or are you going to wait here?" Johnson asked. "No, I will wait here. I don't want to jump into those buses. Your car is not here and none of her cars have fuel," Perpetual replied. Joy went inside the room and wept bitterly. She blamed herself for trusting and loving too much. So if she was blind, that was the way those two planned to dupe her. That was the way they would have left her to die in pain and depression. She shook her head and gnashed her teeth in pain. She picked up her phone and made some calls. Then she hit her head continuously on her pillow. Forcibly, she sprang up, wiped her tears and went to the sitting room. Perpetual was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. In order to act like a blind person, Joy headed towards the couch where Perpetual was sitting. As she approached the couch, Perpetual's eyes widened in horror. She quietly stood up and went to another chair. Inwardly, Joy was killing herself with laughter. It took grace of God for her to stifle her laughter. Few minutes after she sat on the couch, Johnson came back with a brown envelope. "Baby, are you here?" Johnson said, her question directed to Joy. "Yes," Joy said and nodded her head. Johnson placed the envelope on top of the table and went inside the room with Perpetual. "I want to pack my clothes. I won't spend a night in this house again," Johnson said, and Perpetual nodded in affirmation. Quickly Johnson and Perpetual packed all his belongings. and took them to the sitting room. Johnson rushed inside the room and came out with a glass of water. He handed the water over to Joy, urging her to drink. Joy drank a little bit and slowly kept the cup on the table. "Baby, sign this paper," Johnson said with a sweet voice. "Which paper? What exactly am I signing?" Joy questioned. Johnson clocked his eyes with perpetual raised eyebrows, urging him to go on. "Sign it so that I can go and bring the car back. They said that my wife must sign this paper before I will take the car." "Why?" "Baby, forget about why and sign the paper first," Johnson said, dragging Joy's hand towards the place to sign. "Is this the place? Should I sign here?" Joy continued to ask, dragging her fingers from here and there. Johnson became furious that he didn't know when he screamed at her. "Can't you just sign here? Stop dragging your fingers." Johnson calmed down, Perpetual said, and her palms flew to her mouth. She didn't know when those words escaped from her mouth. "Who is that? Did someone say something now?" Joy asked. "No, there's no one else here." "Babe, sign here, let me go and bring the car." They were so engrossed in what they were doing that they didn't notice when some policemen came inside the sitting room. "Officers, welcome," Joy said, startling Johnson and Perpetual. Johnson wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say exactly. He was trying to put everything that had happened together. How did Joy see them? Wasn't she blind? Joy was blind. She was blind and deaf. As he was about to say something, Joy removed her eyeglasses and walked towards the police officers. She shook hands with them and turned to Johnson and Perpetual. These two were dumbfounded. "Are you surprised? Well, don't be surprised. I have been enjoying all your dramas and shows in my house." "What the hell is this?" Johnson managed to say, his lips trembling. Joy turned to face him, her expression icy. "This is the truth, Johnson. The truth about me. I have regained my sight and my hearing for months now, but I kept it as a secret to know you better." Perpetual's face turned pale. "Joy, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain." "Perpetual," Joy interrupted, her voice sharp. "You were supposed to be my friend. Instead, you were sleeping with my husband. I gave you life, everything, yet you did this to me." Johnson tried to step forward, but Joy raised a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "You told me you loved me, Johnson," she said, her voice breaking. "But all you cared about was my money and the life I could give you. And when I became blind and deaf, you decided I was no longer worth your time. You decided to dupe me and elope with my friend. I won't blame you. I blame love." "You don't understand," Johnson stammered. Save it," Joy snapped. "I gave you everything, Johnson. I trusted you with my heart and my life. And this is how you repay me? By cheating on me with my best friend and spending my money on her?" Johnson's face turned red with anger. "You were always too controlling, Joy. You think money can fix everything, but it can't. I wanted a wife, not a boss." Joy laughed bitterly. "And you think being a husband means taking advantage of your wife's generosity? You're a coward, Johnson. A coward who couldn't even be honest." Joy clapped her hands. "I was being a boss, yet I cooked for you. I hand-washed your clothes. I paid 1 million naira into your account every month and also created a joint account for us. Yet you stand here to say that you don't want a boss but a wife. You are ingrate, Johnson." Perpetual tried to leave, but the officers blocked her path. "You're not going anywhere," one of the officers said coldly. Joy took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "You both disgust me," she said, addressing Johnson and Perpetual. Then she turned to the officers. "Officers, take them." Johnson and Perpetual were charged with fraud. When they came out after spending 5 years in jail, Johnson regretted it bitterly for losing a woman that loved him genuinely. Perpetual tried to go back to apologize for her mistakes, but Joy didn't allow her. She also ended up in regret. Meanwhile, Joy later got married to a lovely, wealthy man who treated and pampered her like a queen. They had 2 children, a girl and boy. Joy, despite what happened to her, continued to teach her children what love and true love was all about. True love means standing with the person you love, whether good or bad.